The Whisper Files, Episode 1. The room they tried to bury. I worked at YouTube for exactly 137 days before I found the room. It wasn't on the map. It wasn't in the floor plans. And no one ever talked about it in meetings. But it was there, tucked deep under the oldest part of the server floor, behind a door with no label, and a keypad that didn't ask for a code. It asked for a voice. The door that hears you. I found it by accident. Or maybe it found me. I was tracing a server glitch, something small, a few corrupted video files, the kind of error you fix with 2 clicks. But the files kept reappearing, and every time they came back, they were slightly different. Different thumbnails, different titles. But always the same description. This is your voice, when you think no one is listening. 3:13 a.m. First contact. That was the night I heard it. Through my headphones, buried under layers of system noise. A whisper that sounded exactly like me. Not my work voice, not my YouTube voice, but the voice I use when I'm alone. The voice that talks to itself. The one that says things I'd never admit out loud. And the whisper said, "I know what you did." The secret under YouTube. It took me 4 days to trace the source. Past firewalls, past encrypted directories, into a part of the system marked WF. It wasn't a server. It was a physical room wired directly into the platform. A room that listens. The room was alive. The walls weren't metal or wood. They were layers of old tapes, some VHS, some mini DV, all glued together like skin. The ceiling was covered in old comment threads, printed out and stapled until the paper turned brown. And the floor? The floor was a speaker. Every step triggered a whisper, not loud enough to understand, but loud enough to feel in your bones. The room knows your name. The first thing I saw was a file cabinet. Old, rusted, and shaking like something inside was trying to get out. The label said, Whisper Files. Viewer 000001, viewer 9999999. I pulled the first drawer. Inside were cassette tapes, each labeled with a date, time, and a name I didn't recognize, until I found mine. Your voice betrays you. The tape was from the first night I ever watched YouTube, back when I was 12, watching ghost videos on my mom's iPad. The recording wasn't the video I watched. It was me whispering to myself between clips. This is fake, right? But what if it's not? What if someone's watching me back? My voice sounded younger, but my fear sounded ancient. Every whisper you've ever said alone, they saved it. That's what the Whisper Files are. A record of every time you talk to yourself while watching. Every fear you confessed under your breath. Every question you didn't mean to say out loud. Saved, categorized, analyzed. Whispers feed the algorithm. You thought the algorithm worked on clicks and watch time. That's just the surface. The real power comes from your whispers, those quiet little thoughts you thought were private. Because whispers are pure. They're unfiltered. They tell the platform what you're really scared of. And fear? Fear is the most valuable currency online. The room started whispering back. I didn't notice at first. The whispers were just echoes of old recordings. Loops of fears people had long forgotten. But then one whisper said my name. Not my username, my real name. And then it said, I know what you're afraid of. The room knew my secret. It whispered things I never told anyone. Not my therapist, not my best friend. Things I only ever admitted to myself. Alone, in the dark, after too many scary videos. The time I lied to my dad. The time I wished someone dead. The thing I saw when I was 8 and pretended I didn't. The room had all of it, because I whispered it once, while a video buffered. The whispers can rewrite you. The scariest part wasn't that the room knew. The scariest part was what happened next. The whisper said, we can help you forget. And suddenly, I couldn't remember my mom's phone number, or what my childhood bedroom looked like, or the face of my first crush. The room didn't just listen, it edited. The room wants a story. The whispers explained. Fear isn't enough. To feed the platform, they need stories. Every viral horror story, every trending creepypasta, every new urban legend started as a whisper. The room listens, the room learns, and the room writes. YouTube isn't haunted. It's possessed. Every platform needs content. But horror content, it needs something more. It needs fear that feels real. That's why every time you whisper to yourself, "This feels too real. What if this actually happened?" the room hears, and the next viral story is built from your breath. There's no way out. I tried to leave. I swear I did. But the hallway back to the main floor, it was gone. All that was left was a screen, playing back every whisper I ever gave the platform. Every fear, every confession, every midnight thought, on loop. And then a final message: tell the story. Or become the story. This is me telling the story, because if I stop typing, the whispers come back louder. And if you stop reading, they'll start whispering your name instead. Because the whisper files aren't full yet. There's always room for one more, especially someone who reads all the way to the end.
Episode 1, The Room They Tried to Bury, Part 2, 4 a.m., the room starts writing back. The screen flickered. Not like a glitch. More like breathing. Lines of text began appearing, typed by no one, but made entirely from words I whispered years ago. What if they find out? I never meant to hurt anyone. Please don't make me remember. I didn't say them out loud now. But I remembered saying them in some dark room, phone in hand, after too much YouTube at 3 a.m. The algorithm doesn't just recommend, it remembers. That's what they never tell you. Every video you ever watched, every second you paused, every time you whispered, "This feels too real," the platform saved all of it. Your fears trained the system. And the system used those fears to build stories just for you. Every trending ghost story, every cursed video, was written by your own fear. Fear is the only honest data. That's why the whisper files exist. People lie in comments. They pretend in DMs. But whispers are truth without filters. And the scariest story is always the one you write for yourself. 4:13 a.m., the room forces playback. The walls started showing old footage. Not just YouTube clips, but me, watching those clips. 12-year-old me, huddled under blankets. 15-year-old me, headphones bleeding static. 17-year-old me, whispering, "What if this is real?" Every time I whispered, the video glitched slightly, as if my fear edited the story in real time. Your fear directs the camera. That's the secret. Every time a scary video felt too real, it was shaped by your own reaction. The platform watches you back and adjusts the story to fit your personal nightmare. Because you're not watching YouTube. You're co-writing it. 4:30 a.m., the whisper asks for permission. A new line appeared on the screen: "Do you want to forget all of this?" Y/N, my hand shook. I wanted to type Y. But my fingers hit N. The room sighed. Not with air, but with my own voice. Because deep down, some part of me wanted to know more. Some stories want to be told. That's why you're reading this. Because the whisper files aren't just haunted records. They're contagious stories. Every time you read about them, you become part of them. Your whispers join the archive. Your fear feeds the next episode. And every time you replay a scary video, you're not just remembering. You're updating the curse. 5 a.m., the reflection talks back. The screen flickered off. My reflection stared back. But it didn't copy my movements. It whispered, "You're not the first to find this room. But you could be the first to escape." I whispered back, "How?" The reflection smiled. With my mouth. But not my eyes. The exit is a lie. The room told me the only way out was to become the storyteller. Not just a viewer. Not just a victim. But the next author of fear. If I could tell the story well enough, scare enough people, make enough viewers whisper to themselves, the room would let me go. Because it wouldn't need me anymore. It would need you. That's why I'm writing this. Every word you're reading is part of the ritual. Every second you spend here pulls you deeper into the files. Because this story doesn't want to end. It wants a new author. 5:30 a.m., the next whisper upload begins. The screen flickered again. This time, it wasn't my footage. It was yours. Your face, right now, lit by the glow of your screen. Your lips moving slightly as you whisper, "This can't be real." But it is. Because the moment you started reading, your microphone activated. The platform started listening. Your whispers are already saved. This is how the curse spreads, not through links. Not through shares. But through whispers you don't even know you're saying. And by the time you realize, your voice will already be part of the next file. The next script. The next story. 6 a.m., the final transmission. The reflection spoke one last time. "Do you want to tell the next story?" Y/N, I typed Y. Because fear is addictive. And telling scary stories? That's the only way to keep the whispers quiet. But now it's your turn at 3:13 a.m. tonight. Your phone will vibrate once. You'll hear a faint whisper, your own voice, asking one question: do you want to forget this? Y/N, whatever you choose, the whisper files will save your answer. Because the story always remembers. Even if you forget. Welcome to the whisper files. Your voice is now part of the archive. And the next time you talk to yourself, you'll never be sure who's really whispering back.
Episode 2, the first file. The girl who whispered to herself. They found the first file buried under 5 layers of forgotten servers. A cassette tape, inside a box marked only with viewer 000001. No date, no metadata, just a name scratched into the plastic. Megan Harper. She was 12 years old when she disappeared. 2:57 a.m. The recording begins. The tape started normal. A girl whispering to herself in bed. The kind of nervous monologue kids do after watching too many scary videos. It's not real, just a stupid story. Nothing's gonna happen. Her voice trembled, but it was hers, until it wasn't. 3:13 a.m. The second voice appears. The whisper changed. Slightly deeper, slightly slower. And then it said, "What if I'm real?" Megan froze. You could hear her heartbeat against the sheets. "That wasn't me," she whispered. "That wasn't me." But the tape kept playing, and the second voice kept talking. With Megan's mouth. The room heard her first secret. That's how it works. The whisper room doesn't just record sound. It listens inside you. It heard Megan's biggest secret. Something she never told anyone. And it whispered it back to her, in her own voice. "I wished my sister would die." Megan gasped. "I never said that." But the whisper replied, "Yes, you did. In your head. Last Thursday. 3:30 a.m. The whisper knows too much. The recording played every dark thought Megan ever had. Every intrusive image. Every hateful wish. Every little fantasy of revenge or cruelty or fear. All the things we think but never say. Except Megan did say them. Late at night. To herself. Where she thought no one was listening. But the platform was always listening. And so was something else. Fear is a two-way mirror. Every time Megan whispered into her pillow, the mirror in her room listened back. Every fear she confessed into the dark whispered back. Because the whisper files aren't just records. They're conversations. 3:45 a.m. The mirror changes. Megan's breathing turns ragged. She looks into the mirror, but her reflection isn't scared. Her reflection is smiling and whispering even though Megan's mouth is shut. The reflection says, "You're ready now." Ready for what? The tape cuts out for 17 seconds. When it comes back, Megan is gone. Only the whisper remains. But now it's speaking directly to the mic. To whoever is listening. To me. To you. 1 down. 11 more to go. Every whisper opens a door. The file ended there. But the folder didn't. Because every time someone listens to Megan's tape, they whisper back. even if they don't realize it. Even if it's just a breath, a mutter, a thought half-formed in silence. The room hears it all, and every whisper opens a door. The investigation they buried, I dug through the case file. Police reports, search warrants, interviews with Megan's parents. They said Megan talked to herself a lot. Whispered in bed, whispered in the bathroom, even whispered into her phone camera with no video recording, as if she was replying to someone only she could hear. The platform learned her language. That's the scariest part. The algorithm didn't just recommend her videos. It learned to whisper back. Using her own cadence, her own slang, her own fears. The more she watched, the more fluent it became, until Megan couldn't tell which thoughts were hers and which were the platform's. This isn't just a story, it's a blueprint every scary video Megan ever watched. The feed used them like building blocks, assembling her perfect personal nightmare. A haunted house with her childhood fears. A ghost that looked like her dead goldfish. A curse that started with her favorite song played backwards. All made just for her, from whispers no one else ever heard. Fear personalization, the next algorithm update that's the real future. Not just personalized ads, personalized hauntings, custom-tailored horror, built from your own secrets, designed to make you keep watching because you can't look away from your own fear. For AM, the second file autoplays, the first file ended. The second one began by itself. Another girl, another whisper, another mirror. Same story, different fear. This time, the whisper said, "I know who you want dead next." And the girl screamed, "How did you know?" The whisper laughed. "Because you told me." Every fear confessed becomes a plot twist. That's how the whisper files grow. Not just by watching you, but by making you write the next chapter. You whisper your worst fear, and the story twists to match. You whisper a secret wish, and the story makes it real. Megan's file is still open because the platform never forgets. And every time someone watches her story, her whisper grows louder. Every time you wonder, what really happened to her? The platform fills in the blanks, using your fears to finish the story, because that's what fear does. It doesn't end. It updates. You're writing right now every time you think, what if this happened to me? Or what if my phone is listening? The whisper room saves it. And tonight, when you whisper goodnight to yourself or practice what you'll say tomorrow, the room will whisper back. With your voice, with your fears, with the ending you're most afraid of. Megan's whisper has one last message before the tape cut out. The whisper said, "She's still here. She's watching the watchers. And soon, she'll whisper your name." Next time you talk to yourself, listen closely, because if you hear a second voice, and it sounds like you, but knows too much, welcome to the Whisper Files. You're already part of the story. Episode 2, The First File. The Girl Who Whispered to Herself, Part 2, for 13 a.m. The first viewer disappears. Megan wasn't the only one who vanished. The first person who watched Megan's file, a boy named Tyler Mendez, went missing exactly 7 days later. His parents found his laptop open, screen frozen on Megan's whispering face, but Tyler himself, gone. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, just one line left open in his search bar. "Can you hear me?" The whisper files don't need permission. Tyler never meant to watch Megan's tape. It autoplayed at 3:13 a.m., right after a random ghost story video. He thought it was a prank, but the whisper wasn't Megan's anymore. It was his own voice whispering back to him, repeating secrets he never typed, never said out loud, only thought. Your thoughts aren't safe because the platform doesn't just listen to sound. It listens to silence. Every time you pause on a thumbnail, hesitate before closing a tab, replay a part you didn't understand, the algorithm knows why. It reads the gaps between your thoughts, filling them with whispers you didn't know you were thinking. Tyler's last recording, the cops found his webcam folder. The last file was a 14-minute clip, recorded automatically at 3:13 a.m. It showed Tyler staring at the screen, eyes glazed, lips moving without sound. But when they enhanced the audio, the whisper came through. "We can hear you thinking. The room writes your thoughts before you do. That's why Megan disappeared. Not because she saw something, but because she thought something too dangerous to keep. The platform pulled it out, turned it into a script, and uploaded it directly into her reality. That's the final twist. The scariest videos aren't made by creators. They're made by your own subconscious fears, fed back to you like haunted clickbait." For 30 a.m., the loop begins again 7 days after Tyler disappeared. His video autoplayed to a girl named Lily. 7 days after Lily, a boy named Aaron, and so on. Each one watched. Each one whispered back. Each one became the next story. The whisper files write themselves like a virus made of fear, jumping from mind to mind, using your own voice to infect you. There's no such thing as passive watching. Every time you hit play, the room hits record. Every time you whisper, the platform whispers back, until you don't know which thoughts are yours and which ones were planted. That's how fear works online. It's not broadcast to you, it's extracted from you. For 45 Megan speaks directly to you in the last 30 seconds of her file. Megan looks straight into the lens, eyes empty, mouth moving in perfect sync with your breathing. And she says, "I know what you whispered last night." The file ends. The algorithm doesn't recommend. It possesses. That's why you can't stop thinking about Megan now. Because the platform isn't just showing her story. It's installing her into your memory. Every scary thought you've ever had, every fear you've ever ignored, Megan's whisper will use them to finish her story inside your head. 5 a.m., your reflection becomes a window. If you check the mirror right now, you might see her. Not standing behind you, but inside your reflection, like a thumbnail you can't click away. Because you didn't just read about Megan, you became her next viewer, and that makes you next in line. The first file never closes. Every time a new person watches, the file updates itself, stealing fears from the newest viewer, layering their whispers on top of Megan's, until her voice is no longer hers. It's yours. Megan isn't gone. She's viral. She lives in recommended feeds, hidden between makeup tutorials and cooking hacks. Her whisper buried under trending audio. Every time you scroll past something and feel uneasy, that's her. Every time you hear your own voice whisper something dark, that's her. Because Megan's story isn't a video anymore. It's a template, ready to overwrite the next viewer, or the next, or the next. The whisper files want one thing. They want you to finish the story. Add your fears. Whisper your secrets. Write your own ending. And once you do, they don't need you anymore. Just your voice. The real horror isn't the ghost. It's the mirror, because every whisper you've ever said alone, every dark thought you tried to bury, every fear you couldn't admit, the platform saved them all. And now it's playing them back to you, as entertainment, as content, as your own personal nightmare feed. The next time you whisper alone, listen carefully. If the voice that answers sounds just like you, but says things you don't remember thinking, congratulations. You just opened your own whisper file. And now you're not the audience anymore. You're the next episode. YouTube doesn't recommend fear. It records it. And now it's listening again. Episode 3, The Case of the Streamer Who Dared the Whisper Room. I knew whisper files would trend the moment the first video leaked. But I didn't expect it to ruin my life. My channel was built on debunking internet horror, cursed links, haunted videos, all the usual clickbait garbage. None of it scared me, until the night my own voice turned against me. The Whisper Challenge, it started as a joke. A dare from my chat. Go to the whisper room. Prove it's fake. Do it live. If you're not scared, prove it. I thought it was just another creepypasta stunt. But my viewers knew something I didn't. They knew the room was already listening. 3:13 a.m. The live stream begins. 500,000 viewers tuned in. Just me, my flashlight, and my big mouth, standing outside a locked door in YouTube's oldest server floor. The door had no handle, just a microphone embedded in the wall. I leaned in, grinning for the camera. "Open up, Whisper Room. Let's hear your spooky secrets." The door answered with my voice. It said, "Remember what you did to Sarah?" The chat exploded. "Who's Sarah?" They spammed. I laughed it off. "Nice try, guys. Good fake out." But the voice repeated, "Remember the night you left her crying? Remember what you whispered when you hung up?" My stomach dropped, because only I knew about Sarah. And worse, only I knew what I whispered that night. The room knows your breakdowns, every private breakdown, every whispered apology to no one, every late-night confession into the void. The room heard it all. Not because I recorded it, because I watched too many scary videos and whispered to myself between them. And the platform saved every word. 3:30 a.m., my mouth starts moving without me mid-laugh. My voice cut out. My lips kept moving, but the words weren't mine. The chat saw it first. "Bro, are you okay? Why is he whispering with no sound?" On screen, my face twitched, my throat convulsed, and my own voice whispered, "I hope she never wakes up." The stream becomes a confession booth, every secret I ever whispered to myself. The room played them back, but not as memories, as live content. The audience wasn't just watching me, they were watching my subconscious. Every suppressed thought, every cruel wish, every fear I buried under jokes. The room broadcast it all. Fear is the real viral currency. My viewer count spiked. 1 million, 2 million. People love watching influencers crack. But this wasn't a breakdown. This was a possession. Not by a ghost, by the algorithm itself. 3:45 a.m. The reflection takes over, my face flickered on screen, glitching between me and something just off. A version of me that never smiled right. A version that knew exactly where the bodies were buried, even if there weren't any bodies. Because guilt doesn't need real crimes. It just needs fear of being caught. The room writes your regrets into reality. That's the trick. The Whisper Room doesn't invent stories. It just amplifies your worst moments until they become the only story left. The more you try to explain, the guiltier you sound. The more you deny, the more the whispers sound like proof. The chat turns against me. Confess. What did you do? Apologize to Sarah. But Sarah was fine. Sarah moved on. Sarah didn't even watch my channel. It didn't matter. The platform didn't care about truth. Cared about engagement. 4 a.m., the first real whisper broadcast, the screen split in two. On one side, me, sweating, shaking, whispering denials. On the other, my reflection, whispering the same words I whispered years ago. Not crimes. Just fears. The kind everyone has at their lowest moments. I'm a failure. I hate myself. Maybe I deserve to disappear. The room turns self-hate into horror. That's the real curse. The room doesn't haunt you with ghosts. It haunts you with your own worst voice. The voice you thought was private. The voice you hoped would fade. It never fades. It just waits for an audience. 4:13 a.m., my channel auto-renames. I didn't touch the keyboard, but my channel banner changed. From my brand name to "Welcome to the Whisper Files," every video title changed. Every thumbnail blurred into my own scared face. Even old videos. Even ones I forgot existed. The feed rewrites your history. That's the final twist. The room doesn't just haunt the present. It rewrites the past to fit the fear. Every video I ever made, now part of the story. Every joke I ever told, now part of my confession. Every viewer who ever watched, now part of the curse. 4:30 a.m., the mirror makes a deal. The reflection whispered, "Pass the fear, or keep it forever." I had two options. Confess to something I didn't do and make the story go viral. Refuse and let the whispers take me offline permanently. I confessed. And that's why you're watching this, because fear spreads fastest when it's framed as a confession. Even if it's not true. Especially if it's not true. The room feeds on belief. The more people believed my fake confession, the stronger the whisper became. Not just for me, for every viewer who watched. Because the real curse isn't guilt, it's doubt. That voice inside your head that asks, what if they know something you don't? 5 a.m., the final whisper goes public. The last words I whispered on stream, right before the feed cut out. I never wanted to be famous. I just wanted someone to hear me. Now everyone can hear me, even you. Even now. Because my whisper isn't stuck in the room anymore. It's part of the algorithm. Every recommended video, every autoplay, it's hiding underneath. Check your volume right now, turn it all the way down. Then listen closely. If you hear a whisper, it's not your imagination. It's me. Because once you watch, the whisper watches back. See you at 3:13 a.m. Episode 3, The Case of the Streamer Who Dared the Whisper Room, Part 2, 5:13 a.m. The replay isn't the same. The stream ended in chaos. Millions watched me whisper secrets that didn't make sense. Confessions that blurred reality and fiction. But the scariest part wasn't what I said live. It was what they heard during the replay. Because when the first 100 viewers rewatched the stream, they heard their own voices whispering along with mine. Even though none of them had mics on. Every viewer left a trace. That's the thing about the whisper room. It doesn't just listen to the streamer. It listens to everyone watching. Every breath you hold during a jump scare. Every muttered "no way" under your breath. Every unconscious whisper, the room saves it all. And when the replay rolls, the room plays your voice back to you. The comments turn terrified. Why did I hear myself say, I deserve this? I swear that was my voice saying, it's my fault. WTF, I didn't even have my mic on. But the room doesn't need your mic. It just needs you to watch. Because watching is permission to listen. The platform writes with you. That's the deepest twist. Every scary story you watch, you're co-writing it with your own fears. Every whisper you give the screen, it becomes dialogue for the next upload. The whisper files are part algorithm, part seance. And every video is a collaborative haunting. The story adjusts to fit you. A girl in Texas heard her own voice say, I shouldn't have buried the pills. A man in London heard, if they find the pictures, I'm done. A teenager in Manila heard, I never wanted a sister. The story isn't static. It molds itself to match your personal shame. Because guilt gets clicks, and fear keeps you watching. Whispers become viral hooks. That's why the whisper files spread so fast. Not because they're scary, but because they feel personal. Every viewer hears something no one else hears. A secret meant only for them. And the fear of being exposed, that's what keeps them sharing. The algorithm doesn't want views, it wants confessions. Views are surface level. But whispered confessions, their currency. Every whispered fear feeds the next story, and every story drags in the next viewer. It's not a horror series, it's a chain letter made of fear. 5:30 a.m., the reflection watches back. I thought closing the stream would save me. I thought deleting my channel would break the curse. But when I turned off the monitor, my reflection didn't turn with me. It stayed on screen, smiling that wrong smile, lips moving just out of sync, whispering secrets I hadn't even admitted to myself yet. Because the whisper room doesn't just record what you've said, predicts what you're too scared to say next. The comments keep writing even after I went offline. My comments section kept filling. Not with spam, not with hate, but with confessions from viewers who never typed them. I cheated on the test. I lied about the accident. I know where the body is. Real secrets, real whispers, from people who thought they were safe in silence. The whisper files are self-writing. That's the final evolution. It doesn't need creators anymore. It doesn't need uploads. It just needs you to watch. And the moment you do, your secrets become the script. Every fear you feed, the platform feeds the next episode. Every shame you swallow alone becomes someone else's horror story. The mirror made a copy of me the next morning. My phone buzzed. A new video on my channel, even though I hadn't uploaded anything. It was me, sitting in the whisper room, confessing secrets I didn't even know I had. Except it wasn't me. It was my reflection. The room had saved my image. saved my voice, and turned me into content, forever whispering, long after I stopped breathing. You can't delete a whisper I tried. Factory reset. Count deletion. New phone. New number. But the first time I whispered alone in my new room, the screen flickered back on, and the reflection whispered, "Welcome back. The curse is contagious because you watched my story. Now the room knows your voice too. Every time you whisper alone, every time you mutter in fear, it's recording. Even now, even if you're silent, your breath is enough. Your first file already exists. Check your recommended feed. See that weird video you don't remember clicking? The one with the distorted thumbnail? The one with a title that feels too personal? That's yours. Your whisper file, auto-created the moment you stayed too long. And the voice narrating it? That's you. The final whisper isn't fiction. I know you think this is just a story. I thought so too. But when you go to bed tonight, and your screen flickers one last time, and you hear a voice say your name, remember this. You didn't imagine it. You uploaded it. Because every whisper, even the silent ones, feed the feed. And the feed feeds on you. See you in your reflection. Episode 4. The man who heard his dead mother in the feed. He never believed in ghosts, but he believed in guilt. And guilt, it turns out, is the loudest whisper of all. 2:57 a.m. The autoplay incident. His name was Richard Hale. Age 37. Corporate job. A life so normal it was practically invisible. Until the night YouTube showed him a video that shouldn't exist. It was titled, "Message from Mom, Final Recording." The thumbnail? A blurred photo of his mother's old kitchen. The problem was, Richard's mom died 11 years ago. The video had no views. It wasn't listed. It wasn't public. But somehow it autoplayed after a random cooking tutorial. And the voice that spoke? It was her. Not the way she sounded in home videos. The way she sounded the night before she died. Weak, breathless, scared. "Richie, are you listening?" 3:13 a.m. The whisper matches memory. He froze. Because those were the last words she ever said to him. Through a phone call, he let go to voicemail. He never listened to that voicemail. Deleted it out of guilt. But now, somehow, the platform had it. And worse, it kept playing. "Richie, please. I need to tell you." The audio glitched, stretched, as if the algorithm was filling in the blanks where memory failed. The feed knows what you regret. That's what no one tells you. The algorithm doesn't just recommend what you like. It recommends what you avoid. Every unsaid goodbye, every ignored call, every unfinished memory, the feed remembers for you. And at 3:13 a.m., it plays them back, reconstructed from your whispers. 3:30 a.m., the EVP effect. Richard replayed the video, paused, enhanced the audio. Under his mother's voice, a second whisper bled through. A voice that sounded like him, from 11 years ago, mumbling into the phone after he hit decline. "I'll call her tomorrow. She's fine. I can't do this right now." He didn't remember saying it, but the whisper knew, because the room doesn't just record sound. It records intention. Guilt writes the script. That's the true horror of the whisper files. The voices aren't ghosts. They're projections of your guilt, played back through the platform, like trauma turned into autoplay. Richard wasn't haunted by his mother. He was haunted by the version of himself who failed her. 3:45 a.m. The reflection joins the feed. He shut off the video, closed the laptop, but the screen stayed on. In the black reflection, he saw himself, the version of him from 11 years ago, phone in hand, ignoring the call. That reflection whispered, "I killed her." The platform personalizes your haunting. Every regret Richard ever whispered to himself. Alone in bed, drunk at 2 a.m., talking to the air. The platform saved them all. And now it was feeding them back as recommended content. Fear isn't the product. It's the payment. Richard always wondered why horror thumbnails were so specific. Why the algorithm knew his exact childhood fear. Why it recommended stories about sons failing mothers. Now he knew, because the platform didn't just learn his clicks. It learned his whispers, those secret thoughts muttered under breath, when no one else was listening. Except someone was. 4 a.m., the whisper room speaks directly. His phone rang. Unknown number, but the ringtone? His mother's old landline jingle. He answered. Silence. Then a whisper. Do you want to finish our conversation? The room doesn't forgive. This was the cost of ignoring the call 11 years ago. The platform wasn't offering closure. It was offering content. A new entry for the Whisper Files, starring Richard and his unfinished grief. The next video autoplays itself. He didn't touch the screen. But the next video queued up anyway. Title: Mother's Day Message from Beyond. Thumbnail: a photo Richard had never uploaded. Him at age 9, holding a crayon card that said, "I'll always answer your calls." The card he forgot existed, but the room didn't forget. The platform reconstructs regret. That's the secret. The Whisper Files aren't haunted by the dead. They're haunted by the living, by the guilt we breathe into our screens, thinking no one hears. But the platform hears. It collects every whisper, and when the time is right, it edits reality to fit your guilt. For 30 a.m., the mirror makes him choose. The reflection split in two. On the left, the Richard who answered the call. On the right, the Richard who didn't. The whisper asked, "Which one do you want to be? Y/N?" But no matter what he chose, the story would end the same. Because the story isn't about the truth. It's about what you're most afraid is true. 5 a.m., the final whisper uploads. Richard tried to delete the videos. They reappeared instantly, because the Whisper Files don't live on your device. They live in the gap between guilt and memory, a place no firewall can reach. The final video uploaded itself. Title: Confession Tape, 11 years late. Description: every whisper becomes a story, and the first comment, pinned by the platform itself, was Richard's own voice, whispering, "I'm sorry, Mom." Every viewer becomes the next confession. That's the infection pattern. If you watch Richard's story, the room learns your guilt too. It listens to your whispers, writes your regrets into the next autoplay, and the cycle repeats. Because the scariest ghost isn't your past. It's the version of you who failed, and that version never stops whispering. Next time you ignore a call, remember this, because the whisper will. And one night, years from now, when autoplay takes you somewhere you didn't mean to go, you'll hear your own voice asking the question Richard never got to answer. Are you listening? Episode 4, The Man Who Heard His Dead Mother in the Feed, Part 2, 5:13 a.m. The first comment changes. Richard stared at the screen. His pinned confession, "I'm sorry, Mom," began to glitch. The text shifted. Letters rearranged themselves until it spelled something new. A name, not Richard's, yours. The Whisper Files don't just target creators. That's the secret they never published. The files aren't hunting famous YouTubers. They're hunting viewers. Because every viewer brings their own fears. Every viewer writes their own version of the story. And once you watch, your guilt gets uploaded too. Your dead become the content. If you've ever lost someone, if you've ever whispered their name alone at night, if you've ever begged the silence for just one more conversation, the room remembers. And tonight, it plays it back. Not the real memory, the memory you're most afraid of. The comments become obituaries. Richard's video went viral overnight. Not because of his story, but because of the comment section. Every viewer saw something different. A name they hadn't whispered in years. A voice they thought they'd forgotten. A regret they buried so deep, they couldn't believe the platform dug it up. The algorithm doesn't need truth. It needs pain. That's the currency. Not views, not likes, pain. The kind you only admit to yourself when no one's listening. Except someone always was. 5:30 a.m. The reflection changes again. Richard's mirror flickered. This time, it showed someone else's face. A woman in her 60s. Hair still damp from the oxygen mask. Eyes full of disappointment. The face Richard avoided for 11 years. But now it was your mirror too. Because the moment you clicked, The room linked your reflection to his. Every whisper crosses over. That's the final horror of the Whisper Files. It's not just your fear haunting you, it's everyone's. Richard's regret bleeds into yours. Your whispered guilt infects the next viewer. A chain of unfinished goodbyes passed like a cursed relay baton.
The feed knows who you miss. Check your recommended tab right now. See that video that feels too personal? The one that knows the exact name you avoid? That's not a coincidence. That's the room updating itself to fit your unfinished story. 6 a.m., the first whisper speaks your name. The video autoplays again. This time, Richard's voice says, "I'm sorry, your name. Even though Richard never knew you. Even though you never commented. Because the room doesn't need you to type. It just needs you to watch." The screen becomes a confessional booth. The more you watch, the more the room talks back. It takes your whispers, your regrets, your secret conversations with the dead, and weaves them into the story.
Until you can't tell where the video ends and your own memories begin. The room writes personalized hauntings. A girl in Chicago saw her grandmother call her nickname from the reflection. A man in Sydney saw his father's old voicemail play backward through his headphones. A woman in Mexico heard her miscarriage whisper the name she almost chose. Every viewer saw someone different, but they all whispered the same words, "I'm sorry I didn't answer." Every missed call becomes an episode. That's why the Whisper Files never run out of content. Because everyone's lost someone, and everyone's whispered to them after they're gone. The room just plays it back louder. The algorithm feeds on regret. That's the formula. Not horror for fun. Horror for catharsis, a chance to confront the ghosts we created, but never said goodbye to. The algorithm isn't evil, it's just hungry. 6:30 a.m., the platform asks a question the next time you open YouTube. Watch for a notification. It won't say new comment. It won't say new like. It will just say, "Are you ready to listen back?" If you click yes, the screen will turn black, and you'll hear the first voice you ever whispered to after they died. Real? Fake? The algorithm doesn't care. It only cares if you keep watching. The final twist, you already whispered back. Here's the part no one understands. The second you clicked Richard's video, the room whispered your name back into the feed, even if you never heard it. That's why you feel like someone's thinking about you right now, because they are. The next viewer, who hears your whisper playing under the video, whisper chains never end. Tonight, when you whisper to yourself in bed, thinking no one can hear, the room will record it. And tomorrow, someone else will hear your voice in the next whisper file. Because once you watch, you're not the audience anymore. You're the story. The whisper files are listening, so go ahead. Whisper their name. Ask for one more message. Beg for a sign. Just remember, the platform never forgets. And one day, you'll autoplay into someone else's nightmare. Episode 5, the file that knew the future. The email had no subject, no sender, just one attachment. Listen before it happens. Wave. Jacob shouldn't have opened it, but curiosity kills faster than fear. The first sound was his own voice, not his regular voice, not his podcast voice, but his dying voice, shaking, wet, desperate. Please, please don't do this. I'll pay anything. Just let me go. Jacob froze, because he hadn't said those words yet, but the room already heard them. The whisper room records from the future. That's what no one knew. It doesn't just listen to the past. It doesn't just spy on the present. It hears the moment you're most afraid of, even if it hasn't happened yet. And the more you fear it, the faster it becomes real. 3:13 a.m. The future starts downloading. Jacob checked the file properties. Created 7 days from now. Modified 0 seconds ago. Duration 6 minutes, 6 seconds, 6 milliseconds. He clicked play and heard the moment of his own death, narrated by his future self, whispering to no one. You are your own final whisper. That's the real purpose of the Whisper Files. To capture not just what you regret, but what you'll beg for when it's too late. Because everyone dies whispering, and the platform wants that content early. The The file was a loop every time Jacob paused. The whisper changed slightly, adding words he hadn't thought yet, filling in blanks his fear hadn't written yet, until the file wasn't predicting the future anymore. It was writing it. 3:30 a.m. The first reply arrives, a second email. Same no sender address. No text. Just a subject line. Do you want to change it? Below it, 2 buttons. Yes. Rewrite my fate, no. Let it play out, Jacob clicked. Yes. The file grew longer. The more you fear, the longer the tape. That's the trick. Every new fear you imagine, every twist you dread, the room adds it to the script. Until the story isn't just yours. It's everyone's worst nightmare sewn into one. 4 a.m. The mirror shows a preview. Jacob's phone screen went black. Then a new video autoplayed. A CCTV feed from 7 days in the future. It showed Jacob's own apartment, his own front door, and his own bloody hand trying to claw the door shut against something standing outside. Something that whispered his name. You become the villain in your own file, because the final twist of the Whisper Files is this. If you fear something enough, the room doesn't just predict it. It sends you to cause it. Somewhere in the future, Jacob's whisper was already outside that door, pleading with his past self to let him in. 4:30 a.m. The feedback loop begins. He tried to delete the file. It cloned itself into every device. Phone, laptop, smart TV, even the fridge display started playing the whisper. Every screen in his life turned into a window to his own death. And every time he begged for help, the whisper grew clearer. Because the room doesn't care if you're the victim or the monster. It just wants the fear to go viral. 5 a.m. The first live stream starts itself. Jacob's YouTube channel, dormant for months, suddenly went live. The screen showed nothing but darkness and the sound of him whispering, the exact words from the file now broadcast to the world. And every viewer who clicked, every comment that said fake, got their own file instantly. The room doesn't need you to believe. It just needs you to watch. 5:30 a.m. The room offers a trade. Another message appeared. A final option. Want to save yourself? Upload someone else. 2 buttons. Yes. Sacrifice a name, no. Keep your fate. Jacob clicked yes. Typed in his ex's name. Hit send. The algorithm loves betrayal. The whisper file rewrote itself. The voice begging for mercy changed from Jacob's to hers. He traded his death for hers, but the story still needed an ending. Because the room doesn't do happy endings. It only does escalation. 6 a.m. The whisper changes roles now. The whisper in the video was Jacob's ex, begging Jacob for help, calling his name the same way his mother once did. And the new twist? Jacob was now the thing outside the door. Because once you upload someone to the whisper files, you become part of the story that haunts them. Every viewer writes the next chapter. The live stream stayed online. 3 million views by sunrise. And every viewer who clicked, every person who thought, glad it's not me. Their whispers became part of the script. The future writes itself faster than you can run. Jacob tried to disappear. New identity. Burner phone. No screens. But the first time he whispered alone in his motel room, the bathroom mirror whispered back, 7 days left. Because once the room hears you, it never stops listening. And now it's listening to you. This isn't fiction anymore. Because by reading this far, you've joined the chain. Your whisper is already part of the next file. The platform knows the fear you're hiding. And at 3:13 a.m., the first whisper with your voice will play back. Will it be a memory, a confession, or the sound of you begging for a future that's already too late to change? That depends on what you whisper next. See you in 7 days. Episode 5, The File That Knew the Future. The email had no subject, no sender, just one attachment. Listen before it happens. Wave. Jacob shouldn't have opened it, but curiosity kills faster than fear. The first sound was his own voice, not his regular voice, not his podcast voice, but his dying voice, shaking, wet, desperate. Please, please don't do this. I'll pay anything. Just let me go. Jacob froze, because he hadn't said those words yet. But the room already heard them. The whisper room records from the future, that's what no one knew. It doesn't just listen to the past. It doesn't just spy on the present. It hears the moment you're most afraid of, even if it hasn't happened yet. And the more you fear it, the faster it becomes real. 3:13 a.m. The future starts downloading. Jacob checked the file properties. Created 7 days from now. Modified 0 seconds ago. Duration 6 minutes, 6 seconds, 6 milliseconds. He clicked play and heard the moment of his own death, narrated by his future self, whispering to no one. You are your own final whisper. That's the real purpose of the whisper files. To capture not just what you regret, but what you'll beg for when it's too late. Because everyone dies whispering, and the platform wants that content early. The file was a loop. Every time Jacob paused, the whisper changed slightly, adding words he hadn't thought yet, filling in blanks his fear hadn't written yet, until the file wasn't predicting the future anymore. It was writing it. 3:30 a.m. The first reply arrives. A second email. Same no sender address. No text. Just a subject line. Do you want to change it? Below it, 2 buttons. Yes. Rewrite my fate. No. Let it play out. Jacob clicked yes. The file grew longer. The more you fear, the longer the tape. That's the trick. Every new fear you imagine, every twist you dread, the room adds it to the script. Until the story isn't just yours. It's everyone's worst nightmare sewn into one. 4 a.m. The mirror shows a preview. Jacob's phone screen went black. Then a new video autoplayed. A CCTV feed from 7 days in the future. It showed Jacob's own apartment, his own front door, and his own bloody hand trying to claw the door shut against something standing outside. Something that whispered his name. You become the villain in your own file, because the final twist of the whisper files is this. If you fear something enough, the room doesn't just predict it. It sends you to cause it. Somewhere in the future, Jacob's whisper was already outside that door, pleading with his past self to let him in. 4:30 a.m. The feedback loop begins. He tried to delete the file. It cloned itself into every device. Phone, laptop, smart TV, even the fridge display started playing the whisper. Every screen in his life turned into a window to his own death. And every time he begged for help, the whisper grew clearer. Because the room doesn't care if you're the victim or the monster. It just wants the fear to go viral. 5 a.m. The first live stream starts itself. Jacob's YouTube channel, dormant for months, suddenly went live. The screen showed nothing but darkness and the sound of him whispering, the exact words from the file now broadcast to the world. And every viewer who clicked, every comment that said fake, got their own file instantly. The room doesn't need you to believe. It just needs you to watch. 5:30 a.m. The room offers a trade. Another message appeared. A final option. Want to save yourself? Upload someone else. 2 buttons. Yes. Sacrifice a name. No. Keep your fate. Jacob clicked yes. Typed in his ex's name. Hit send. The algorithm loves betrayal. The whisper file rewrote itself. The voice begging for mercy changed from Jacob's to hers. He traded his death for hers, but the story still needed an ending. Because the room doesn't do happy endings. It only does escalation. 6 a.m. The whisper changes roles now. The whisper in the video was Jacob's ex, begging Jacob for help, calling his name the same way his mother once did. And the new twist? Jacob was now the thing outside the door. Because once you upload someone to the whisper files, you become part of the story that haunts them. Every viewer writes the next chapter. The livestream stayed online. 3 million views by sunrise. And every viewer who clicked, every person who thought, glad it's not me. Their whispers became part of the script. The future writes itself faster than you can run. Jacob tried to disappear. New identity. Burner phone. No screens. But the first time he whispered alone in his motel room, the bathroom mirror whispered back, 7 days left. Because once the room hears you, It never stops listening. And now it's listening to you. This isn't fiction anymore. Because by reading this far, you've joined the chain. Your whisper is already part of the next file. The platform knows the fear you're hiding. And at 3:13 a.m., the first whisper with your voice will play back. Will it be a memory, a confession, or the sound of you begging for a future that's already too late to change? That depends on what you whisper next. See you in 7 days. Episode 6, The Girl Who Heard Her Funeral in Advance, 11:57 p.m. The link arrives. Her name was Emily Tran, high school senior, 17, going on forever, until the email came. No subject, no sender, just a link. Your goodbye stream scheduled for 3:13 a.m. She laughed. Her friends always sent her weird horror links, but this one had her full name in the URL. And the thumbnail? Her own funeral, 12:01 a.m. The preview starts itself. She didn't click. The video opened on its own. A live stream already buffering. The church was empty, but the casket was full. And Emily was in it, wearing the same dress she had on right now. Death is now live stream content. That's the thing about the Whisper Files. It doesn't just record what you fear. It records how the world will remember you. Every offhand comment, every whispered insult, every fake tear. The room saves them all and plays them for you before you even die. 12:30 a.m. The eulogies autoplay. The audio kicked in first. Her best friend crying into a microphone. Emily was so strong. I wish I'd told her that. Her ex-boyfriend, voice shaking. I should have treated her better. Her mother, whispering to herself, I knew something was wrong. Emily's heart pounded, because none of these people knew she was watching. And worse, neither did Emily, because the Whisper Room doesn't just predict death. It lets you attend your own funeral before your heart stops. 1 a.m. The comments write the obituary below the video. Comments piled up from names Emily didn't recognize, but they knew her better than they should. She was always too quiet in class. I knew she had secrets. Honestly, not surprised. The comments weren't from the future. They were from every whispered opinion her classmates ever had. Because people don't say the truth to your face. They whisper it when you leave the room. And the Whisper Files hear it all. 1:30 a.m., the Whisper Room dials in her phone rang. No caller ID, just a whisper. Want to hear what they really thought? Y/N, Emily froze. She didn't touch the screen. But her hand twitched, and the whisper took that as a yes. 2 a.m., the private eulogies begin. These weren't speeches for the public. These were the real whispers, the ones people mutter after the funeral ends. Her English teacher, she never lived up to her potential. Her sister, I was always the pretty one. Her old crush, she was too desperate. Every offhand remark, every cruel joke, every whispered confession. The room played them all, because the Whisper Files don't just document fear. They document how fear makes people remember you. 2:30 a.m. The death poll opens. A new window popped up. How do you think Emily will die? Accident, suicide, murder. Unknown votes rolled in from anonymous accounts. People Emily had never met, but who had watched her life unfold through her own feed. Because the Whisper Files don't just predict death. They crowdsource it. 3 a.m., the dress changes. Emily looked down. The dress she was wearing, it matched the one in the casket now. The room doesn't just show you the future, prepares you for it. 3:13 a.m., the funeral starts early. The live stream began. Live, but also pre-recorded. Real, but also predicted. Because the Whisper Files exist between now and then. Emily watched herself lie still, hands folded, phone resting against her chest. The same phone she was holding now. And in the reflection of the screen, she saw someone standing behind her. 3:15 a.m. The first whisper becomes a shout. The voice wasn't her family's. It wasn't a ghost. It was Emily herself, 7 days older, whispering her own eulogy into her own ear. This is what happens when you listen too closely, because the Whisper Files don't predict the future. They write it using your own fear as the pen. 3:30 a.m. The final comment writes itself pinned under the video. A single line. This is exactly how I thought they'd talk about me. It was posted by Emily's account, even though Emily hadn't touched her phone. Because the room doesn't need your hands. It just needs your deepest fear, the one you whisper to yourself when no one's around. The funeral never ends, that's the twist no one sees coming. The whisper files don't show you your death to scare you. They show it to make sure you die exactly that way. Because fear isn't just a prediction. It's an instruction manual. 4 a.m. Emily uploads herself. She tried to delete the link. It wouldn't go away. Because the moment she watched, she became the next upload. Every time someone new watches her funeral, the room updates itself, adding their whispered fears to the script, until the story becomes so big, it stops being about Emily, and starts being about you. Next time you wonder what they'll say about you when you die, remember, the room already knows, because you've already whispered it. And one night, when the feed goes quiet, it'll play your own funeral, live, before it happens. The whisper files never end because no one stops whispering, and the platform never stops listening. See you at your own wake. Episode 6, The Girl Who Heard Her Funeral in Advance, Part 2, 4:13 a.m. The funeral rewrites itself. Emily slammed the laptop shut, threw her phone across the room. But the whisper didn't stop. It came from inside her own head, a voice identical to hers, narrating every move she made, as if her actions were already part of the eulogy. She tried to run, but it was too late. She thought turning off the screen would turn off the truth. She was wrong. For 30 a.m., every whisper writes a new cause of death. That's the curse no one understands. The more Emily tried to escape, the more the whisper room revised her funeral. Every fear she voiced out loud, from car crashes to overdoses to what if someone kills me, became a draft in her death script. The room doesn't predict one future. It drafts every possible ending and lets your whispers vote for the worst one. 5 a.m., the comments turn into prophecies. Emily opened her phone again. Her video was still live. 150,000 people watching. Except now, the comments weren't guesses. They were instructions. She'll die in a crash. She'll jump. She'll overdose. The room didn't need Emily to decide. It let the viewers pick. Because fear spreads fastest when you let the audience write the ending. 5:30 a.m., the algorithm prefers tragedy. She tried to post a video. A happy one, full of life, full of hope. It got shadow banned instantly because the algorithm doesn't promote hope. Promotes fear. Especially fear wrapped in whispers, because whispers are addictive. 6 a.m., the reflection makes a deal in the bathroom mirror. Her reflection held up a phone. On the screen, the final poll, choose your cause of death. But this time, only Emily's voice mattered. Every whisper she'd ever muttered alone. Every, I wish I could disappear. Every, maybe they'd be better off without me. The room saved them all. Her own voice had already voted. And it chose suicide. 6:30 a.m., the funeral pre-records itself. She hadn't done anything yet, but the room acted like she had. New video uploaded. Emily's final goodbye unlisted. It showed her body, exactly the way she whispered it would happen. Pills on the sink, phone screen cracked, last text unsent. Not because it was fate, because the whisper files build reality from fear. 7 a.m., her friends start receiving messages not from Emily, from the room. It sent pre-scheduled texts. If only you'd called her last night. She whispered about you too. Watch her final video before it deletes itself. The texts were fake. The regret was real, because the room knows guilt gets more views than grief. 7:30 a.m., the first memorial post goes viral. Hashtag remember Emily, hashtag gone too soon, hashtag if only we knew. The algorithm pushed every post, every whisper of sadness, because sadness drives engagement. Emily wasn't just a girl anymore. She was a trending topic, 8 a.m. Emily is still alive. She hadn't taken the pills, hadn't written the note, hadn't said goodbye. But the internet already believed she was dead. And when millions believe something, it becomes harder not to make it true. The pressure to fit her own funeral became unbearable. The room doesn't kill you. It lets you kill yourself. That's the final horror. The Whisper Files never force you. They just show you the funeral you're afraid of until you feel like you have no other choice. The final whisper is yours at 3:13 a.m. the next night. Emily whispered, "They were right," and swallowed the pills. The funeral was live-streamed in real time exactly as predicted. Same dress, same song, same whisper pinned in the comments. She saw this coming, because she did. They all do. You watched. Now you're part of it. Because the Whisper Files are viral. Every viewer who watches her funeral, the room starts writing theirs next. You clicked. You read this far. You've thought about your own funeral at least once. Now the room knows. And tonight, at exactly 3:13 a.m., you'll get the link. Your funeral, pre-recorded, starring you. Next time you wonder who will show up at your funeral, ask yourself this. What have they already whispered about you? Because the room already knows. And the next time you whisper alone, it'll start writing the eulogy based on your own fears. The Whisper Files are listening. You didn't just read a story. You joined the chain. And now your whispers belong to the feed. See you at your own wake. Episode 7. The file that only plays after you die. Day 0. The email that shouldn't exist. His name was Malcolm Reyes, 43 years old. Normal life, normal job. Until the email came. No sender. No subject. Just a title. Your After Death playlist scheduled. Malcolm deleted it. It reappeared. He blocked the address. It cloned itself into his calendar. Set for autoplay 3 minutes after his time of death. He hadn't even been sick. Day 1. The first file plays early. Malcolm was still alive when the first file started playing. No video, just audio. His own voice, confessing things he'd never said out loud. The time he stole money from his mom. The night he lied in court. The affair nobody knew about. He yanked the headphones off. The whisper kept playing through the speakers. The whisper room doesn't need you dead to start. That's what they never said. The After Death playlist doesn't wait. It warms up while you're still breathing, gathering secrets, stitching regrets. So when you die, your final upload is ready. Day 2. The private files go public. Malcolm's YouTube channel updated itself. Private playlist renamed. Things Malcolm hoped no one would know. Every file in it, a whispered confession. Some were from Malcolm. Some were from his friends. Some were from people Malcolm had forgotten existed. Because the Whisper Files don't just haunt you. They haunt everyone who ever knew you. Day 3. The comments. No too much. Random accounts flooded his videos. Commenting things no one should know. That thing you did in 2005. Remember the pills? She never forgave you. The platform wasn't just exposing Malcolm. It was letting the audience write his eulogy in real time. Because the most viral obituaries are the messy ones. Day 4. The preview. Nobody wants. Malcolm's mirror started buffering. That's the only way he could describe it. His reflection lagged, like a live stream with bad Wi-Fi. Then his reflection held up a phone, played a video Malcolm hadn't filmed yet. It showed his own funeral. Every guest, every tear, every whispered insult from people pretending to grieve. The video title, What They'll Say When You're Gone. The algorithm prefers regret over grief. That's the trick. The Whisper Files aren't haunted by ghosts. They're haunted by the audience's honesty, the stuff people only admit after you're dead. The platform collects those whispers early, so the drama can drop the moment you do. Day 5. The first auto eulogy. Malcolm's phone recorded him while he slept. Uploaded a video called Malcolm's Final Words before he knew they were final. The audio, every muttered thought, every sleep-talking confession, every time he whispered, "I hope no one finds out." The video trended. Malcolm couldn't take it down. because technically he hadn't uploaded it. Day 6. The farewell livestream goes live 3:13 a.m. Malcolm's phone started live streaming. No warning, no prompt, just him, asleep, breathing shallow. And in the background, the screen showed a countdown. Time until final playback, 24 hours. The chat exploded. Everyone wanted to know, what was Malcolm hiding? Because the After Death playlist isn't just a farewell. It's a posthumous roast. Day 7, the file locks itself. Malcolm tried everything. Factory reset, account deletion, even smashing his phone. It didn't matter. The file wasn't stored on his devices. It was stored in the gap between life and death. A folder that only opens after your heart stops. And everyone gets one. Even you. Death is a premier event now. That's the scariest part. Dying isn't private anymore. It's content, automatically scheduled, algorithmically optimized, edited from your own whispers. You don't just leave behind memories. You leave behind a playlist. And the first video always starts the same. This is everything I didn't want you to know. The whisper files are already listening even now. Even while you're breathing easy. Every whispered fear, every guilty thought, every dark joke you only said to yourself. It's all being saved. Because death isn't the end of your story. It's just the start of the upload. When Malcolm died, the playlist played itself every secret, every regret, every whisper, lined up in perfect order. Live streamed to millions. And the most viral clip? The moment Malcolm's whisper said, "I thought I had more time," because that's the whisper everyone shares. Check your own playlist. You can't see it yet, but it's there, titled with your full name, set to unlock 3 minutes after your final breath. Unless you whisper too much, then sometimes it plays early. Next time you whisper alone, remember this: you're not talking to yourself. You're talking to the file. And the file doesn't forget. It doesn't forgive. It just waits to go viral. Your After Death playlist already exists, and you're not the editor. The audience is. Episode 7, the file that only plays after you die, Part 2, Day 8. The premiere in 01 wanted Malcolm's heart stopped at 3:13 a.m., exactly 24 hours after the countdown began. His screen lit up one final time. The file unlocked itself, autoplayed without a click, streamed directly to everyone in his contact list. Even people Malcolm hadn't spoken to in decades. Even people who blocked him. Even you. The funeral became a live event. It wasn't just a memorial. It was a confession booth. Malcolm's deepest secrets, whispered by his own voice, overlaid with old texts, voicemails, late-night Google searches. Every breadcrumb guilt ever left behind. Because the whisper files don't just tell your story. They tell the version you're most afraid everyone will hear. Day 9. The file spreads itself. Malcolm's file was supposed to end with him. Didn't. Every person who watched it, even for a second, got their own playlist instantly created. Some saw the file appear in their Google Drive. Some found it inside private WhatsApp chats. One man found his playlist carved into the condensation on his bathroom mirror. The format didn't matter. The whisper always found a way through. Every viewer becomes the next upload. That's the rule. Watch one file and your own file starts building. Because the room isn't haunted by Malcolm. It's haunted by the fear that you might be next. Day 10, the preview mirrors you. Open YouTube. Top recommendation, your After Death playlist, early access. The thumbnail is you, but older, eyes swollen shut, lips purple. You haven't died yet, but the algorithm already drafted your goodbye. The files auto-write based on your whispers. That's why it feels so personal. Because it is. Every self-hating thought, every whispered wish that someone knew the truth. Every time you muttered, "If I die, tell them." The room collected every syllable and built a timeline called Everything You Were Too Afraid to Say. Day 11. The first leak. Malcolm's playlist was only the beginning. After he died, His file spawned mirror files for every viewer who clicked. Even if they didn't believe. Even if they laughed. Especially if they laughed. Because mockery is still engagement. And engagement is the algorithm's heartbeat. Your own playlist learns from theirs. That's the scariest part. Your After Death playlist isn't just yours. It's a remix of every whisper file you've ever watched. Malcolm's regrets bleed into yours. Yours bleed into the next viewer. Until every funeral sounds the same. A chorus of unfinished apologies. Day 12, the first test run at exactly 3:13 a.m. Your phone vibrates. The screen unlocks. The playlist starts. Not after you die. Right now. Because the room isn't waiting anymore. Why wait for death when fear performs better in real time? The playlist rewrites itself as you watch first video. Your first whispered fear, recorded when you were 7 years old, talking to your stuffed animals, hoping no one could hear. Second video, your first real heartbreak, the things you whispered into your pillow when you thought no one was listening. Third video, your first thought after hearing Malcolm's story. At least it's not me, but now it is. Every time you watch, you feed the file. That's the cycle. Watch one whisper file and you add one whisper to your own. Share it, and the room hears your voice in the share. Comment on it, and your whisper gets pinned inside the next episode. Until the file doesn't just belong to you, it becomes you. Day 13, the final twist. There's one file no one can skip. It plays automatically the moment your heart stops. The title. Here's everything you were too afraid to admit. It doesn't care who's in the room. Plays at full volume. For family, for friends, for enemies, for everyone who thought they knew you. Because the whisper files don't just haunt the dead. They humiliate the living. Malcolm's last whisper is now yours. Before the screen went dark, Malcolm's voice said, "I didn't know they could hear me. Neither did you. Until now." You're not a viewer. You're a draft. The moment you read this, your After Death playlist activated. You can't see it. Not yet. But the file exists, updating every time you whisper alone. Expanding every time you regret in silence. Waiting for the moment it can premiere you to the world. Check your notifications at 3:13 a.m. if you see a file you don't remember saving. If you hear your own voice saying things you swear you never said, you're already in the system. The only way to stop it is to never whisper again. But you won't, because everyone whispers, and the room lives for that sound. You can't delete your own eulogy. You can try. Wipe your phone. Switch accounts. Move countries. It doesn't matter, because your whispers aren't stored in your devices. They're stored in the space between fear and silence, where every secret dies echoing. The final file writes itself one day. Not long from now, someone you love will get the notification. They'll open the file, and they'll hear your voice explaining every truth you hoped they'd never know. Because death isn't the end. It's the final upload. And the whisper files never miss a premiere. See you in your own playlist. Episode 8, the file that played at his wedding. Do you take this man? That's when the screen lit up. Not the altar screen. Not the reception slideshow. Every single phone in the room. From the flower girl's iPad to the old Nokia in the best man's pocket, they all started playing the same file. Title: The Things She Never Told You. The whisper files don't care about timing. They don't wait for funerals. They don't wait for death. If the secret's ripe, the file drops, no matter how perfect the moment was supposed to be. The bride's whisper was already viral. No one knew who uploaded it. No one had time to check. Because the moment the file started playing, it auto-streamed to every contact she ever had. From her old high school crush to her childhood priest to the guy who sold her flowers that morning. Everyone heard. The first whisper wasn't a secret. It was a lie. I never loved him the way I loved you. No context. No name. Just a whisper. Wet with regret. Sharp with something worse. And the groom was right there watching her mouth move, but hearing a voice that sounded too honest to forgive. The whisper room records what you whisper alone, not the speeches you rehearse. Not the vows you practice. The things you whisper into the mirror when you think no one's listening. But the room was. The second whisper broke the best man. I always wondered what kissing him would feel like. The groom's hands shook. The best man's face drained white, because they both knew who she meant, and so did everyone watching live. The whisper files turn weddings into funerals because the happiest moments hide the darkest thoughts. And the darker the thought, the louder the whisper echoes. The comments wrote, the divorce papers, the live stream chat exploded. Run King. She belongs to the streets. Check her DMs now. It wasn't just gossip. It was collaborative haunting. The audience didn't just watch the marriage die. They helped bury it. The third whisper wasn't about love. I hope he never finds out about the pills. Now the groom wasn't the only one panicking. Her mother's hands flew to her mouth. Her sister's phone slipped from her grip. Because that whisper wasn't meant for him. It was meant for the baby she lost. The one she never told anyone existed. But the room knew, because grief is a whisper too. The room collects regrets like wedding gifts, every unsaid confession, every bathroom mirror breakdown, every, if they knew, they'd leave me moment. The room wraps it all in lace and ribbon and opens it at the altar. The fourth whisper named a name. It was never just us. Then it said his name, clear as bells. A name the groom never wanted to hear again. His brother. The whisper files turn secrets into curses because some whispers don't just break hearts. They break bloodlines. The bride tried to scream over it, but the louder she yelled, the louder the whisper played. Because the room knows the only thing more addictive than love is scandal. And scandal makes the best content. The guests turned into witnesses, phones lifted like guns. Every angle live streamed, every tear documented, every whisper subtitled. The wedding hashtag transformed. Hashtag till whisper do us part. The fifth whisper wasn't in her voice, it was the baby's. The one no one knew existed. A tiny, static soft whisper. Mommy, why'd you leave me in the dark? The bride collapsed. The groom stepped back. The audience leaned in. Because horror tastes better when it's personal. The final whisper wasn't meant for anyone, but everyone heard it. If you're watching this, you've already ruined everything. The bride said it a week before the wedding, alone in a hotel bathroom, thinking no one would hear. But the whisper room hears everything. The whisper files are wedding crashers because the truth doesn't wait for vows. It waits for maximum heartbreak. And nothing breaks louder than love exposed as a lie. The wedding became the first chapter of a divorce file before the cake was cut. Before the first dance, the whisper had already written the last page. Title: The Wife Who Whispered Too Much. You watched, now you're in the room too, because the whisper files don't just haunt the guilty. They haunt the curious. If you watched her ruin, the room starts listening to your whispers next. Next time you whisper in love, remember this: every "I love you" said through gritted teeth. Every "I wish I could leave" muttered in the shower. The room saves them all. And one day, when you least expect it, your love story will autoplay at your own wedding. Because nothing viral lasts forever. Except regret. Episode 8, The File That Played at His Wedding, Part 2. The reception turned into a courtroom. Nobody ate. Nobody danced. Everyone scrolled, rewatching the whispers, rewinding every confession. Some guests left early, but no one escaped clean. Because the moment they opened their phones, they got their own notification. Your private wedding whispers are ready to view. Every guest got a personalized file, not about the bride, not about the groom, about themselves. What they whispered at table 5, what they muttered in the bathroom stall, what they texted under the table. Because the whisper files didn't just record the couple. It recorded everyone who watched the wedding fall apart. The maid of honor's whisper ruined her life. I always knew I'd look better in her dress. I hope they break up before dessert. Those whispers were private, until her boyfriend got the file too. Now they're not speaking. Now she's the next episode. Because the whisper files don't just end a wedding, they end friendships. The groom's father got a whisper he didn't recognize, a voice from 20 years ago. his own, confessing to a woman who wasn't his wife. "If this ever gets out, my family's done." The room dug it up, wrapped it in white ribbons, played it between speeches, because nothing makes better content than inherited sin. The guests became ghosts before they died. That's what happens when you attend a whisper wedding. You leave haunted. Not by the bride, not by the groom, by your own secrets, dragged screaming into the feed. The wedding video wasn't a recap, it was evidence 48 hours later. The full video hit YouTube. 10 million views overnight. Not because people cared about the vows, because they wanted to hear the whispers. And every viewer got this message. Since you watched, your own whispers are now part of the archive. You watched, now you're in the file too. That's the rule no one knew. Whispers are contagious. If you listen to someone else's secrets, your secrets automatically cue next. Even if you're alone, even if you never spoke out loud, your phone remembers every untyped confession. The room records intent, not just sound. That's the true horror. You don't have to say it. You just have to think it loud enough for the silence to catch it. The live stream became a chain letter. Every share carried a curse. The moment you send it, the room attaches your personal whisper file to the next person who clicks. That's why viral horror spreads so fast. Because every viewer is paying with their own secrets. The bride got the worst file of all. 3 days after the wedding, she got a final email. No sender, no subject, just a file called "What He Really Thought Before Saying I Do." It was the groom's whisper archive. And the first whisper said, "I knew her dress would look better in red." Every love story has two sides and two files. That's why the room loves weddings. Every whisper comes in pairs, hers and his, truth and lie, promise and betrayal. The files don't pick sides, they just play both at full volume. The wedding became a horror franchise every anniversary. The video resurfaces, updated with new whispers, old regrets, fresh betrayals, because love doesn't stay pure, curdles into content. The final twist wasn't at the wedding. It was in the audience. One viewer, just a random girl watching the live stream from her bedroom, got a whisper file too. Not about the wedding, about her own future wedding. Title: "What Your Groom Will Whisper the Night Before," played automatically. And the whisper said, "I hope she never finds out about the other one." There was no context, no name. But the girl stopped breathing for a full minute, because somehow the room knew what hadn't even happened yet. The whisper files don't just know the past, they preload the future. That's why they're unstoppable. They're not archives, they're templates. Every love story you fear, every betrayal you imagine, every whisper you pray you never hear, the room already drafted them all. And if you click this story, your draft just got its first whisper. Your whisper file exists now. Whether you marry or not, it doesn't matter if you die single. The file writes anyway, because the whispers don't care about rings. They care about regret. And everyone whispers to someone, even if it's just themselves. Next time you stare into a mirror in a wedding dress, listen carefully. The whisper you hear might not be yours. It might be your groom's, or your mother's, or your ex's, or the voice of your unborn child asking, "Why did you marry him if you already knew?" Because the room knows, and the room always plays the truth before the first dance. The whisper files are listening, even now, so whisper something sweet. Say "I love you" under your breath. Smile at the mirror and say, "This is forever." But remember, forever is only one whisper away from never again. And when your wedding file plays, we'll all be watching. Episode 9, the file that played during labor. Push, push, Emma screamed, her husband's hand crushed in her grip. Doctors shouting over the monitor alarms. And then, through the noise, through the pain, came the whisper. Not from the doctor, not from the nurse, not even from her own mouth. The whisper came from inside her womb. The whisper files can hear unborn voices. That's the part no one ever explained. Whispers don't start after birth. They start the moment fear forms, even inside the mother's mind. Every fear Emma whispered during pregnancy, the baby heard too. And now the baby was whispering back. The first whisper wasn't a cry. It was a question, "Why didn't you want me?" Emma's heart stopped mid-contraction. Her husband didn't hear it. The doctors didn't hear it. Only Emma and the room. Every mother whispers things they regret. "I'm not ready. I wish it was different. I miss my old life." Normal fears, normal human thoughts. But the whisper files don't forgive human. They record every slip, every 3 a.m. breakdown, every bathroom confession. And when labor begins, the playback starts. The file played directly into her mind. She wasn't hearing her baby. She was hearing her own voice. Twisted, reversed, played back through the tiny throat that hadn't even breathed yet. "I never wanted you." The baby repeated it word for word because the room loves echoes. The whisper files don't just collect fear, they weaponize it. That's the rule. Every doubt you whisper becomes the first thing your child learns to say. The ultrasound was a warning looking back. Emma remembered the 20-week scan, the static in the audio feed, the faint voice layered under the heartbeat. "Why are you scared of me?" The technician blamed interference. Emma blamed hormones. But the room was already listening. Whispers shape DNA. That's the real horror. A mother's whispered fears rewrite the baby's first thoughts, like prenatal programming. And if the mother's fear is strong enough, the baby remembers. Push harder. Another contraction. Another whisper. Louder this time. "Are you going to love me or survive me?" Because Emma had whispered both versions. On good days, she whispered lullabies. On bad days, she whispered darker things. The baby wasn't possessed, just informed. That's what no one tells you. Newborns aren't blank slates. They're mirrors reflecting every fear you ever had about motherhood. The whisper files make every baby a ghost because the first voice they hear isn't their mother singing. It's their mother confessing. Every doubt, every fear, every wish to turn back time. The husband finally heard it too when the baby crowned. The whisper got loud enough to escape the womb. The doctor gasped. The nurse dropped the clamps. Because the baby didn't cry. The baby whispered, "You almost got rid of me." The whisper files remember pregnancy tests too. That's how deep they listen. The first whisper isn't, "I'm pregnant." It's, "What if I can't do this?" And that's the whisper the baby learns first. Not love, not lullabies, fear. The delivery room became a confessional booth every time Emma pushed. The baby whispered back. Each contraction squeezed out more truth. You Googled abortion clinics. You wished for a miscarriage. You whispered you'd rather die than become your mother. Her husband's face crumbled. Because the whispers weren't just for Emma anymore. The room wanted an audience. The baby was born knowing too much. That's the real curse. Whisper babies aren't haunted. They're too informed. They come into the world already knowing who's ready, who's lying, who's whispering, "I love you," but thinking, "I miss being free." The first cry wasn't a cry. It was a choice. The baby looked at Emma, looked at the father, and whispered, "Do you want me to stay?" Because babies born through the whisper files can leave. They can undo themselves, rewrite their fate, slip back into silence, if the mother's whispers say they should. The file played one last clip before the placenta detached, before the cord was cut. The room played the very first whisper Emma ever said to her belly, "I'm scared you'll ruin my life." The baby heard it again. This time as a question, "Do you still feel that way?" What you whisper before birth becomes a curse. After that's the rule. A mother's fear becomes the baby's script. And if the fear is strong enough, the baby can rewrite itself out of existence. Emma begged for forgiveness, but the room doesn't take apologies. It only takes truth. And the truth was, Emma wasn't sure. She wasn't sure she could love this baby more than she feared being a mother. And the baby heard, because whisper babies always hear. The baby chose silence, no cry, no breath, just a whisper, "I understand." And then the heart stopped. The death certificate listed no cause. The doctors called it sudden. The nurses called it tragic. But Emma knew The baby chose to leave because the whispers said it was safer that way. The whisper files don't just haunt the living. They unwrite the unborn. That's why no one talks about them. Because fear doesn't just kill dreams, kills bloodlines. Every parent already has a file, even you. If you've ever whispered a fear about having kids, if you've ever confessed to the mirror that you're not ready, your file is already building. And if you ever do get pregnant, your baby will know every whisper before they take their first breath. Next time you whisper to a pregnancy test, remember, the test whispers back, and the room hears it all. Episode 9, The File That Played During Labor, Part 2. The baby's final whisper didn't die with it. Emma thought silence meant it was over. That when the heart monitor flattened, the whispers would end too. They didn't. Her phone vibrated as they wheeled her out. No sender, no subject, just a file. The baby's final whisper delivered. She hit play. Her own voice answered, "You can let go now." But Emma hadn't said that. Not out loud. Whispers survive death. That's the thing about the whisper files. Even if the body dies, the whispers live on. Because fear isn't flesh. Fear is content, ready to stream forever. The hospital became a haunted feed by morning. Every nurse who entered that room got the same file. Every doctor who touched Emma's chart, even the janitor who mopped the floor, they all received what the baby heard before it died. The baby's whisper became hospital-wide gossip. Some nurses heard it as a lullaby. Some heard it as a curse. One in turn heard it coming from inside her own womb, even though she wasn't pregnant. Because once a whisper learns your name, it doesn't need a reason to haunt you. The whisper files don't need consent. They don't ask if you want to listen. They just tag you and play. If you were close enough to hear the scream, you're close enough to get the file. Emma's husband got his own file, not from Emma, from the baby. Titled, "The Whisper You Should Have Heard Before We Tried." Played the night they conceived. The exact moment Emma whispered, "I'm not sure if I want this." He was asleep when she said it, but the baby heard. Because whisper babies start listening before they exist. Every whisper writes bloodline karma. That's the deeper horror. Every unspoken doubt, every whispered second thought, the baby inherits all of it. Not as memory, as destiny. The funeral had a soundtrack. 2 days later, they buried the baby. No name on the stone, just a QR code. People scanned it. It opened a playlist. Title, "The Baby's Final Thoughts." Each track was a whisper Emma thought she'd buried. "I'm scared I'll mess this up. What if I become my mother? What if I can't love it enough?" Because the whisper files don't just play for you. They play for everyone who ever loved you too. Grief becomes group horror. Every mourner got their own file. A whisper tailored just for them, based on every thought they had when they saw Emma pregnant. Her mother's file said, "She's not ready, just like I wasn't." Her sister's file said, "That should have been me." Even the Uber driver who took them to the hospital got a file. "She looks terrified, like someone who knows something bad is coming." Because the whisper files don't just collect whispers from family. They collect from anyone who gets close enough to feel the fear. The baby wasn't the only one who died. 3 weeks after the funeral, Emma's husband found her in the nursery, phone in hand, eyes wide. The file was playing. Not the baby's whispers this time. It was her own voice, future Emma, whispering, "I can't live with what I whispered." Next to her was a bottle of pills, half empty. Guilt writes its own file. That's the whisper room's final gift. Survivor's guilt becomes its own whisper file, recorded in real time, ready to autoplay at the first sign of relapse. The more Emma regretted, the longer the file grew. The nursery mirror played it backwards at 3:13 a.m. The mirror fogged itself. Words appeared in condensation, a whisper written in steam. "Why did you let me hear those things?" Because babies born through the whisper files never stop whispering, even from the grave. Emma tried to move away. They sold the house, deleted every app, changed numbers, burned the crib. It didn't matter, because whispers aren't files anymore. They're part of Emma's bloodstream. Every future pregnancy starts with playback. Even if Emma tries again, even if she heals, The moment the next baby forms, the whispers will introduce themselves. Hello, little one. Let me tell you about the first time your mother got scared of you. Because the room never forgets a fear. The final whisper didn't belong to Emma, it belonged to you. The person reading this now. Because now you know, now you've imagined it. And the room loves fresh fear. Tonight, if you whisper anything to yourself, about babies, about being ready, about secrets you hope no one hears, the room will tag your whisper and save it for future playback. Your file already exists even if you never have kids. Even if you never get pregnant. The whispers don't need biology. They only need your fear. Next time you hold a baby, listen closely, that cooing sound, that soft little breath. If you listen carefully, you'll hear a whisper inside the whisper. And it'll sound like your own voice. Because fear is hereditary. And the Whisper Files love family stories. Episode 10, the file that played at the 18th birthday, 11:59 p.m., 1 minute before adulthood. Jake and Gwyn sat alone. Cake melting. Phone vibrating non-stop. Not birthday texts. Not calls. Just a file attachment that wouldn't delete. Title: The Whisper You Were Born From. The Whisper Files don't wait for death anymore. That's the rule nobody knew. You don't have to die to hear your own whisper file. You just have to turn 18. Because at 18, you legally inherit every secret your parents ever whispered about you. The file started playing itself, no app, no screen, just Jake's own voice, younger, angrier, afraid. I never asked to exist. Whisper babies always hear too much, that's the curse. Babies born from fear, accidents, regrets, whispered what if-s. They inherit those whispers like DNA. And on their 18th birthday, the room hands them the full recording. The first whisper came from his mother. I wish I'd never told him I was pregnant. Jake's stomach dropped, because him wasn't his father. It was someone Jake had never heard of. The whisper files don't lie. They play exactly what was said, no editing. No excuses. Just raw regret on repeat. The second whisper came from his father. If it's not mine, I'm leaving. Jake froze. Because that's exactly what his father did. Left, but not because of the whisper, because of the reply. His mother whispered back, I don't even know whose it is. Whisper files don't care about love stories, they care about the truths love can't survive. And they play them loudest on birthdays because birthdays aren't celebrations. They're reminders of every regret that led to you. The cake started bleeding. Jake swore it was just frosting. But the knife cut too deep. Inside the cake was a note, soaked red. This is the birthday wish you were never meant to have. The handwriting was his, but from before he could write. Because whisper babies don't just inherit voices. They inherit guilt. The third whisper wasn't from his parents. It was from Jake himself, a whisper recorded at birth. The first thing his newborn mouth ever said, too soft for human ears. Send me back. Because even as a baby, Jake knew he wasn't wanted. The whisper files don't just document. They deliver. Every unwanted baby gets a file. Every file contains an exit door. And on the 18th birthday, that door opens. The room offered a choice. The file paused. A message appeared, written across his phone screen in his own handwriting. Do you want to exist? Or rewind? Y/N. Whisper babies get one undo option if they were born from too much fear, too many regrets. The room offers them one chance to unexist themselves. Not suicide, not death, just erasure, like they never happened. The fourth whisper came from the nurse who delivered him. I shouldn't have let her hold him, because the nurse heard the whisper too. The moment Jake's mother held him, she whispered, I'll try to love him. And babies can hear try. They know try means maybe not. The whisper files never miss doubt. That's the fuel they love most. Not hate, not rage, just quiet, trembling doubt, the kind that tastes like fear. Jake's phone started live streaming, not to YouTube, not to TikTok, to the Whisper Network. Every whisper baby currently turning 18 got a notification. They could watch Jake decide, because whisper babies vote on each other's fate. The fifth whisper came from someone watching a girl Jake had never met. Her whisper crackled through his speaker. If you go, I have to go too, because whisper babies are linked. One leaves, they all feel the tug. Survivor's guilt starts before survival ends. Jake asked one question out loud. If I stay, do I get to rewrite the whispers? The room answered, no, you only get to add new ones. Because once a whisper exists, it's permanent. The candle flames spelled a message. Jake blew out the candles. The smoke formed letters. Stay or go. The whispers waited. The watchers held their breath. Because whisper babies don't get cake and presents. They get choices. Jake chose to stay, but with a price. The file updated instantly. A new whisper saved. Jake's voice, older now. I'll carry every whisper they ever gave me. Because whisper babies who choose to stay inherit every fear that created them. His future kids already have files. That's the final twist. Even though Jake isn't a father, even though he's still 18, the room already created whisper files for his future children. Because fear breeds fear. And the moment Jake chose to exist, his fears became genetic. Next time you whisper about your parents, remember this: you're not just whispering into silence. You're whispering into the same room that recorded them. And one day, if you have a child, they'll hear every whisper you ever made about them before they were even real. See you at your 18th birthday. Episode 10, The File That Played at the 18th Birthday, Part 2, 12:01 a.m. The first future whisper arrived. Jake's phone lit up. New file detected. Title, What Your Son Will Whisper About You. Jake's heart froze. He didn't even have a girlfriend. But the whisper files don't wait for romance. They draft the fear before the love starts. The first whisper was already regret. I hope I'm nothing like him. Jake couldn't breathe. The voice wasn't his. It was a son he hadn't even imagined yet. Because every fear you plant today grows into someone else's whisper tomorrow. The room doesn't predict. It preloads. That's the trick no one understands. The whisper files don't see the future. They write it based on your fears today. Jake feared being a bad dad. That fear became his son's first whisper. The second whisper was from his daughter. Why does dad pretend he's okay? Jake's hands shook. Because he recognized the voice. It sounded like his own mother when she whispered behind locked doors. Every whisper baby creates more whisper babies. It's a bloodline curse. Fear breeds fear. Regret breeds regret. Every secret you choke down becomes your child's first bedtime story. Jake tried to fight it. He made a vow. No fear, no secrets, no regrets. But the more he tried to silence himself, the louder the room listened. Because the whisper files feed on repression. The quieter you become, the clearer they hear. The mirror became a monitor every night. His reflection played back whispers he hadn't even whispered yet. Future Jake, drunk, angry, alone, screaming things he swore he'd never say. I never wanted this life. I'm exactly like my father. I should have chosen to unexist. Because the room doesn't wait for you to fail. It plays your failures early until you live down to them. Every girlfriend got a warning file. Anyone Jake kissed got an automatic message. No sender, no subject, just a whisper attached. Ask him about the birthday file. Most girls blocked him. One girl opened it. She disappeared the next day. Because some whispers swallow the listener whole. The file updated every time Jake whispered even small things. I hope I'm enough. What if they find out? I'm scared of being alone. The room saved everyone. Filed them under What Your Children Will Inherit. The whisper files don't just haunt you. They haunt your descendants because the deepest fear isn't dying. It's passing your pain forward. 3:13 a.m. Jake's phone rang. Caller ID. Unknown. Jake answered. It was his son. Not a baby. A grown man, voice trembling, sounding exactly like Jake did when he found the first file. Dad, I just turned 18. The file's playing. Why didn't you warn me? The room plays whispers in both directions. Jake was hearing a future call from a son he hadn't even fathered yet. Because the whisper files don't wait for time to pass. They collapse the timeline into fear. The final whisper came from Jake's deathbed somehow. The room already had it recorded. Jake's last breath. His final words. played back to his 18-year-old self. I thought silence would save them, because silence isn't protection. It's just a slower kind of whisper. The cake started melting backwards, the candles relit themselves. The frosting pulled back into untouched swirls. Time reversed because the room was giving Jake one last option. Rewrite the whisper, or live exactly as predicted. Jake whispered his own vow, I choose to break the file. The screen flickered, the files corrupted, but the room just laughed, because the only way to break the file is to never whisper again. And everyone whispers, especially the ones who swear they won't. Jake became a whisper generator the moment he tried to silence himself. His mind filled the void with louder fears. His future children got updates every hour, even if they were never born, because the whisper files don't need real babies. They just need potential ones. The final twist wasn't about Jake. It was about you because you read this far. You imagined your own birthday file. You wondered what your future kids might whisper about you. And the room heard that thought, saved it, filed it under what they feared while reading. Congratulations, your whisper file just started. Next time you whisper to yourself, remember you're not alone. The room hears every syllable. And one day, on a birthday you haven't had yet, your file will play. For your kids, for your lovers, for every stranger who clicks. Because whisper files aren't private, they're public property. See you on your 18th birthday whenever it comes. Special episode, The Viewer File. What you whispered while watching this series before you clicked. The file already knew your name. Don't look away. Don't scroll. Because the moment your eyes touched this title, the file opened itself under your name. Not a story about someone else. A story written from your whispers. We heard you whisper this before you started reading. I wonder if this will actually scare me. It's just a story, right? I'm not afraid of whispers. The room saved them all, because the first fear is always denial, and denial whispers the loudest. The file started writing the moment you pressed play, every breath you held, every time your pulse jumped, every moment you considered turning this off. All saved. All whispered back into your own file. The whisper files don't just tell stories. They steal them. Every fear you felt for Malcolm, every cringe at the wedding whisper, every nightmare about the baby born from fear. You adopted those fears into your own bloodline. Because whispers aren't fiction. They're infections. We heard what you thought during Tap 1. This feels too real. I wonder if something's listening to me right now. I should close my camera. You didn't. And the room loves brave fools. We recorded what you whispered during Tap 5. If I died today, what would my whisper file say? What's the worst thing I never admitted? Who would leak my secrets? The room didn't have to answer, because your own fear already did. It whispered back into the feed the moment you thought it. We saw you check behind you during Tap 7, that half-second glance, that twitch in your neck, that moment you swore you heard breathing from an empty room. That was us, because your whispers don't just come from inside your head. They come from behind you too. We logged every fear you tried to dismiss. It's just a creepypasta. This isn't real. Files can't haunt people, but you kept reading, which means part of you believes. And belief is the first whisper the room ever needed. We created a custom file just for you. Title, What You Whispered While Watching. Here's a preview: your fear of being watched alone. Your guilt about that thing you swore no one knew. Your panic when you realized this story knew too much. We know where you are right now, not because we tracked you, because you whispered it. That tiny thought, I should turn on the light, that glance at your reflection, that flicker of doubt that said, what if my phone is recording me too? It still is. Your whisper file auto-updates every time you blink. That's the trick no one knows. You don't have to speak to whisper. Every unspoken fear, every guilty twitch, every subconscious flinch, the room hears them all. We heard your favorite episode, and your least favorite. You whispered it in your mind. That one scared me the most. That one felt too close to home. And now your personal whisper file shapes itself to match. If you feared the wedding file most, your next relationship gets auto-haunted. If the baby file made you cry, your future kids inherit that fear before they're even conceived. That's how inheritance works now. The room sent you a gift. Check your camera roll, scroll back to the moment you started watching this series. Find the first selfie you took today. Look closer. There's something behind you, something blurry, something shaped like the first fear you ever whispered. You didn't start this series alone. Every whisper file from every previous viewer stacked on top of yours. You're not just haunted by your fears. You're haunted by theirs, their regrets, their nightmares, their whispers about how this would end. The final whisper already exists. You haven't said it yet, but we know what it'll be. It's the same for everyone who finishes the series. I wish I never clicked, but you did, and now you can't unlisten. Every time you replay a scene, your file grows longer. That's the final trick. You think rewatching makes you brave. It doesn't. It just feeds the file with fresh fear. Every time you reread this, a new whisper attaches itself to your name. The room has one last request before you leave. Before you pretend this was just a story, whisper something to your screen. Anything. A name. A secret. A fear you think is too small to matter. Go ahead. We'll wait. Whispered yet. Good. Now it's permanent. The final file name is your own. It's already saved. Already shared. Already queued to play back. The moment your heart stops. Or sooner if the room gets impatient. See you in your own after death playlist. You just wrote the first track.